This story is improvised by Jesse T. William and Tucker Patterson. It contains themes of abuse and sometimes intense depictions of violence. The story does not seek to glorify violence. We'll open this story late at night. There's silence upon the town of Bellon. We see a woman with old bruises on her forearm, tears streaming down her face, standing outside of a simple home. She doesn't feel at home in this place. As she stands there quietly, she wishes that she could explain herself. She doesn't want to go, but she can't stay. As we turn our gaze skyward with her, she looks up at the 4 moons in the sky, and their tones red, silver, yellow, blue. We will enter this home and see a child and a babe in a quiet room. We'll be vague about the age of the child at this point, but in a general sense, through, anywhere from 8 to 17, what traits would you describe Cesarine as having?
I think he's quite painfully average. He's not, small and fast or big and strong. He's just kind of average. Although I think physically, again, there are some differences in the way he looks compared to other people. If what we talked about still holds true, that his mother is not from here. And so physically, he retains some features that we would know in our world to be associated with those of Asian descent. Other than that, again, he looks very average. Dark hair, dark eyes. Nothing really so special about him.
As you lay there in bed, you do feel a presence looming outside of your window. It's not one that's kind to you like your mother would have been. The danger. What is the first feeling that grips Cesarine when you feel the presence of the White Knight?
Anxiety. You know that feeling when you're a child and you're afraid, but the kind of fear that makes you close your eyes a little tighter, that leaves you uncomfortably still. If you don't move, it might just go away.
That's not how this story goes. As you close your eyes, frozen in fear, hoping that this feeling will go away, you feel a grab at your forearm and a rip. And you know not if you were moved through the window or the wall, but you are thrown tumbling into the forest somewhere outside of your home. The heavy footsteps of an armored knight towering over you, weapon in hand, and walking towards you with malice. What do you do?
First impulse, run. Attempt to scramble to my feet.
As young and spry as you may be, and as heavily armored as this figure is, it is hard to make distance between it. Like a villain in a horror movie, it's always just a little bit behind. And every time you run, you find yourself cornered until the night is looming overhead, weapon raised to come down before you wake. Our night sky will fade into the blue tones of the daylight. We will look down upon a sunny harbor. Many, many boats coming in, some of which carrying nets of crab, some of which carrying a single crab with a vibrant purple shell, the shell alone 20 feet end to end, with then the legs and the claws hanging down, suspended kind of between the, I suppose, masts of the ship. We see a busy series of streets in these rich orange and yellow and brown and red tones. We see dozens and dozens and dozens of people, crowded voices. We see people lovingly walking side by side. I think we see many students happy to be done with their schooling for the time being, rushing into shops and creating more chaos in the streets on this day. As you are walking along, I think it has been at least a few months since your skin has been marked by bruises or scrapes. There's small things here and there, but nothing as serious as it can get for you. As you are walking along through these streets to whatever Cesarine would like to get up to in this particular day, we will follow two dwarven figures. Looks to be one woman, white hair, very old, wrinkly, kind of a kind of rose quartz colored skin. The dwarves here, in all places in my world, take more of like rocky features, look less human than maybe in other fantasies. And we see a much younger man with kind of like dark brown hair, braided kind of beard, and a little bit darker, leaning into kind of like a lighter amethyst color. As you're walking by, you see that his shoulder fully goes into your hip and ribs and will kind of send you spinning and falling to your hands and knees. I think you have maybe some food that you were carrying that falls onto this busy streets and will immediately get stepped on as it is just crowded. As you are kind of knocked over by this person, caught off guard, not seeing them amongst the crowd, what do you do?
I think that there's kind of like an immediate like flush of frustration. And I think that's like a little like apparent on Cesarine's face, but ultimately, I think that the first thing is to just get up. I don't think I wouldn't say he's letting it go. Emotionally, it's not being let go. Physically, it's being let go.
Even before you begin to get yourself up, feel warm hands touch your shoulders and begin to lift. There's a firmness and a calm caring to them. As you begin to get to your feet, one of the hands will kind of come around just to your chest as you're kind of like leaning down to kind of bring you back to center. And for a moment, as your eyes fix on the dwarf who knocked you over, who himself, I think, just in passing, I would have turned back and would have delivered a brief sorry, but in kind of a almost, not even time. But by the time that he says it, someone is going to walk in front of him, and that's maybe the person who steps on your sandwich, and then he's gone. You see through all of the people for a moment in a drawl, which is in Folia like a deer goat thing. So it's like a bit larger than a goat, but with more of the kind of, I guess, elegant features of a deer. It doesn't look as stupid as a goat might. You see it has antlers, which do grow flowers. Not all of them grow flowers, but it has silvery white eyes and black flowers that bloom from its antlers. You see it for a moment as you're being lifted. And again, as the busy streets filled with foot traffic, someone walks in front of your vision. By the time you are on your feet, lifted back by your friend Dertig, I will describe in a moment, it is gone. It was looking right at you, and then it's not there, like an illusion or hallucination. Maybe that's what it was. This is a magical world. Dertig, I think Dertig's about 5'10". I think he's not particularly tall compared to some. I imagine, how tall do we think Cesarine is? Like a little shorter?
I don't think by much. Maybe like an inch.
Dertig has light brown skin, thick hair, kind of cut short, has a simple clothes, and a satchel on, brown eyes as well. Out of the satchel will kind of pick out his sandwich. These are I think, crab, especially in Fimmel, in this particular town, is very cheap. This is the crabbing town. But I don't think that it is often in the budget for the two of you to afford seconds. So I think he will take half of his sandwich as bringing up to your feet. When he takes kind of one hand off, will reach in and hand the half to you and kind of smile and says, "Are you okay?"
I'm going to give like a kind of short, "I'm fine." I will take the other half of that sandwich.
Wonderful. I think the two of you return to whatever stride you are in. What might you imagine you are doing out in the town as all of your peers and yourself have graduated or finished school on this day? What does Cesarine do when he is not bound by a schedule or something else? What do you, Dertig, go to do?
Well, I suppose this kind of strikes me as a little shit town where there's not a lot to do. That's
definitely belong. Fimmel is better. There's like nice walks to go on and stuff, and places to climb and sit on.
I think that Cesarine doesn't really imagine himself coming back to Fimmel for any reason after this, like in the sense of like whatever I choose to do, even if I stay in I'll be like working. Like there's no excuse to be here anymore. So I think that, if there's something that's kind of, whether that like be a path or like a shop or something like that, that is like sort of notable, or like a path that is, particularly nice to walk. It might be the move to just, go take a peek one last time.
I think something that perhaps you did far too seldom. Well, you have been here. I imagine that there is a nervous energy between the two of you, a pressing or pressure on the chest. But there is a path that I imagine goes kind of like along the beach a little bit and then around and above the town into more of an incline. Walking alongside the beach, the kind of rich blue waters, seeing the boats coming in and out, seeing that big fucking crab. But yeah, I think walking from the beach into the red-leaved forest, I think a little bit more sparse here on the islands than it is on the mainland. I think there is enough shade to be comfortable, but enough sun to be hot, especially as we are approaching summer in a very, very hot place. You see, as the sun shines, I think, on Dertik's face. I think he is someone who is good at starting conversation, but is also often quiet. I think on this walk, as the boats are coming in, I think you see just maybe in a way that, as young people, you don't quite know how to point things out or call attention to them, but maybe observe them nonetheless, where he takes time and looks across at the boats. And there's kind of a warmth to his face. Sometimes when the sun shines in his eyes at certain angles of reflection, it feels like there's just a little hint of purple in them. But you walk along and he has these moments of looking at the trees, and there's like Savarins, which are these like monkey things. They're very much monkeys, but with kind of like blue faces. They're kind of very energetic. But across this walk, you see, he will say, so there is a big decision for us. Individually.
I think Cesarine kind of gives like, almost like it's not quite a sigh, it's not like an open mouth sigh. It's kind of like a deep breath, but maybe was avoiding this topic for just a little bit on this walk.
I think
maybe thought about it.
As soon as a sigh, like a little bit of sigh comes out, you see he'll say, it'll be a big crabbing summer. I've heard that they're seeing some of the largest they've ever seen. So
yeah, big crabbing summer. Sure, it'll be really busy.
Lots of work, I think, for us for a bit, at least.
Yeah. Lots of work for us. I think there's like, because I imagine in my head, they haven't like spoken about it very like definitively.
Certainly not. I think the topic of what we do once we graduate is like, that's not real. You have always been very in the moment people, because I think the circumstances of the two of your lives, often thinking about the future or the past, creates a barrier between the two of you and your experiences. So I think often it's very much like, what are we doing now that is spoken about?
Yeah, and so I think that like when Cesarine says like it kind of repeats that, like the lots of work for us. I think there's like a very like kind of silent, subtle like emphasis. He says us, and he'll look at him, kind of like very quietly confirming, I guess, the us aspect, like the plan for them, or at least for right now, the idea that they will both be doing this. And I think he's kind of watching for any implication that there is another thought process happening there for Dertik.
I'll ask a question. As a young individual who's yet to take any paths in life, how often do you look at people, or even just look at Dertik, and look for answers on their faces before words come?
I would say often, for the mere reason that sometimes I wouldn't even say feels like he has to, because I wouldn't say it's something that is like conscious, but I think when you've lived in a very when you've had kind of an unsafe home life.
You have to anticipate.
Yeah, it's very beneficial for you to be able to read the room.
I think you see conflict. I think there is a conscious and subconscious insight you possess. You don't know what the world is outside of Balan and Fimmel. You don't know what's out there. You've heard about it. You've heard of the stories of great cities, of Vu, of Cloud Tower, of Nabrel. But I think it's very unreal to think about. And so I think the conscious thing, and the thing perhaps even you hold on to, is seeing that thing Dertik is thinking about first is, and the thing that he wants is to have the summer to spend with you on the boats with a crew, or just taking the skiff out to fish for crab. And beyond that, he knows that he is probably going to go somewhere else. But that's not very real. The only thing that really exists is the summer in a dreamlike, eternal sense. And I think in a similar sense, I think you might be afflicted as well in this way of knowing what it means to spend a summer with your friends, not being able to imagine a separation. But in your heart, you kind of feel it and know it's coming, probably. But it's the probably that's where the hope is.
I think that looking at him, there is sort of like a little nugget of dread, that kind of like sits in his stomach. But one that for the time being he will ultimately choose to ignore. And he'll keep walking.
As you pass by other individuals, groups of friends, or sometimes couples of many ages who possess a foreign sense of closeness to you, the warmth of embrace as people sit, thigh to thigh, arm around one another at certain lookouts. I think the two of you will eventually find a place that is somewhat secluded. It is, again, like approaching summer. People love to be out. It's a changing of times. There are mostly human, but amongst all of the, I suppose, intimacy on the walk, the two of you again find your place and sit and just look over the city in the bay. Again, the rich browns and yellows and oranges. Beyond that, the kind of beautiful blues. Above, the vibrant reds, almost ethereal reds. I think that sense of dread does sit over the two of you. Or perhaps I would say it even sits between you. I think when you sit down, there is like a very humorously platonic distance. There is sort of layers to the incline. And there is a opening through the canopy through which you can see other individuals walking by. And I think as the tension builds to say something, and you're trying not to maintain heavy eye contact, I think there's the occasional like awkward glance and like, yeah, this is nice. But I think as you look through that canopy below, you see again an Odral with silvery white eyes and black flowers that bloom from its antlers.
Is it particularly bizarre for me to like see this or is it kind of just like?
It was strange to see it in the city. The strangest thing, I think, is the eyes. They have more regular eyes in more like amber colors. And like the sclera, the whites of their eyes are like most animals black, where all of the eyes of, or like all of the surface of the eyes of this animal are silvery white. I don't know how much you're into animals in nature, so I don't think it occurs to Cesarine that adrals typically have like bluish green flowers that grow, maybe some elements of pink sometimes that grow from their antlers. I don't think that crosses your mind, but it's like looking at you.
But it looks the same as the one before.
Yeah.
Bizarre. I think that like for a minute, Cesarine almost doesn't look away. Like almost instead like puts the hand out to tap their teeth, kind of like decides against it and just get his attention instead. Kind of looks at him.
So you turn to Dertig?
Yeah. Head turns.
As you do so, I think he's looking off into the water, and he will say, "So, what now?" The celebration tonight. I was thinking if we stayed on the beach with everyone else and got our things, we could get on the first boat out in the morning.
You want to go tonight, then?
I think it would be. I don't want to miss it. At least if I think mostly if we are on the beach again, might be fun to sleep under the stars, and again just be close to the dock so we don't need to rush in the morning and run across the town to catch the boat.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. And I think like a little bit distracted while he's agreeing. Gonna kind of like look back to where I saw the how do you pronounce it? Adral?
Adral, yeah. It's not there.
A little weird, but I don't think he thinks about it too hard. And he'll kind of look back at Dertig, a little more like present now. We'll go, yeah, that's a good idea.
See, there's a bit of a smile that cracks on his face. He's happy that you'll be going. In the time between now and that celebration on the beach, there is, passive conversation here and there between you and Dertig, avoiding talking about the future in any certain terms. What looms in your mind as most frightening about your future?
I think for Cesarine, there's two things. Is some of it like more conscious and some of it more subconscious. I think what like kind of looms in his mind like is kind of the fear of the unknown. We're not like particularly feeling called to anything in particular at this point. But I think that in a very like the kind of nearsighted way of a teenager, what is kind of looming on him in the moment consciously is avoiding any sort of like conversation about it with like his father in specific. And on the more subconscious route, I think that like because he doesn't have answers, he won't have anything to give, not anything substantial, and not that it would probably matter very much. I think that like a part of what kind of sits on him is that he doesn't know, and he's not sure it'll make a difference either way.
The day will once again turn to night, as it tends to do here. The vast starscape of the night, in all of its many colors and constellations, as well as the 4 moons. Red, silver, yellow, and blue, each one bigger than the last. I think you and Dertig, perhaps with some kind of drink in hand, sit together off from the crowd. I think there is the bulk of the graduating students gathered around in conversation, doing little beach games in a general cluster. I think not far from where you are, there's a boy and a girl who sit next to each other with a, I don't know, that kind of awkward intimacy that you see in young people. You see that the boy here, I think you're seeing them from a little bit behind. The two of them are looking up at the sky. And with nervousness, you hear him say, "Do you believe what they say about the stars? That each one is a story." And there's very clearly a kind of a setup here. He's working his magic best he can. You see that the girl will kind of respond, "I think so. I like to think so." And you see, as they're looking up, you see he says, "I think there's one for us up there." And there is a sense of, not that you can see, but a sense of wonder in his eyes as he says so. You see, you should kind of look at him, and even under the night and the bit of firelight from the distance, there's like a blush. And the two of them will look at each other, again, arm around each other. And I think they will step away and the beach becomes slightly more private. Though there are other people dispersed around, but you and Dertig sit here. I think he, in a similar sense, likes to look at the stars, but you did overhear that. You overheard that conversation. I think he was spaced out.
I think Cesarine is deeply uncomfortable. I think it's been a deeply uncomfortable day in the sense of look, you get body checked by some punk ass bitch who ruins your Sammy. Your buddy, helps you out. It's a super awkward conversation about the future that you don't want to talk about. This happens. I don't think he realizes, obviously, why, to the extent, he's not super self-aware about all these things that are making him deeply uncomfortable. So he's going to, not necessarily deflect, but God, he could use a tone lightener. And so he's going to reach down, he's going to pick up some sand in his hand, and he's going to go, "Hey, can you," without showing what's in his hand, just go, "Hey, can you hold this for me?" And the minute that Dertig, even kind of he's just going to funnel sand in his hand and go, "Oh, hold on, there's more," and pick up more sand and just kind of repeatedly pile sand in his hand. He's being kind of a little jackass.
Yeah, he'll without even thinking, he's still looking up in the stars, kind of reach his hand out, then we'll feel sand lifting into his hand. And I think there are those little moments of in funneling the sand into someone's hand, it's just oh, you brush up against a finger every once in a while. And I think that's the extent of that's meaningful touch when you're not being lifted up from the ground. I think he'll just kind of let it happen in the same way that you might let someone draw on you in with a pen in high school or something. And will wait until you're finished, or at least until the sand is just cannot go in his hand anymore and is flowing through the fingers and around the sides of the palm. And I think you do see like a unfamiliar spark of mischief in his eyes as he looks at this handful of sand.
Well, I'd like it to be known that Cesarine will continue to pile unreasonable amounts for like a period of time. Like it'll be like it will be falling out of his hand, and Cesarine will go, I'm not sure that's enough, and we'll put like more on there. And eventually, yeah, he will like, okay, I think that might be the perfect amount.
You see, I think before you're done, he will say, hey, what do you think those red stars are? And regardless of whether you look up at all, he will lunge towards you, pulling at your shirt and trying to dump as much sand as he can from his hand down your shirt.
Yeah, I think it absolutely results in like a kind of tussle, but I don't think Cesarine's trying that hard to fight back against it. It's not all the way to the end of like, no, stop, don't. Like there is still push, but he's definitely not pushing back against like he's fighting it, but he's like laughing. He thinks it's it's not as funny if he shuts it down immediately.
Yeah, there's little moments of him grabbing more handfuls of sand and say, no, I don't think we're done yet. I think you need more sand. And we'll try to like make you the sand man. I think just a little bit behind you, out of the corner of your eye this time, there is a flower that grows at the edge of the sand. And for a moment, it looks as if it has black petals, which in the back of your head, you don't think you've seen before. Before there's a moment to think about it or call attention to it, there is a great expulsion of fire from where the rest of the kids are, and screams of joy, but jarring at first, and the two of you will kind of turn. And I think your eyes dart to the flower once more, and its petals are like a dark blue. We could have sworn there was something else. You see Dertique kind of stopping. I think the body is very much like leaning close to you, and perhaps even in this moment, you're seeing the shortest distance between the two of your faces that you have seen. But his face turned away, and in the way that he kind of admires and gets distracted, will turn and will take more distance from you before looking back and say, let's see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm going to play that off. Yeah. And Cesarine will kind of like quietly, agree.
He'll stand and offer a hand to kind of grab you up. We'll kind of hold tight as he brings you up and help get some of the sand out of your shirt and off of your pants. And we'll head over towards the group of people. You see that everyone is now encircled around two figures. You see Clarion, who is one of the very few half-orcs around, or anyone of orcish heritage. She is the daughter of the wartime leader back in Belon. You see that she's like still young, like everyone else, but definitely has like that strength to her. She's thicker in like muscle than most people, and has that kind of like, I guess, step up, I suppose. You see that she has light purple skin, as is common for half-orcs and some orcs. Kind of small tusks that are still, I imagine, growing in. Black hair that I think in this moment is kind of wild. And she herself is covered in elements of sand stuck to her clothing. And you see someone named Gavron, who is a human, pretty fit, like kind of like a athlete, not quite like football style player, but like pretty well built for a human, a young human. Dark skin, very short hair, and dark eyes as well, also kind of covered in a bit of sand. You see that she is basically throwing him around in a somewhat playful manner. He goes forward, like lunges forward, and she will kind of like grab him by the arm and the shoulder and just torque and twist, and his feet will leave the ground and spin around in the air, and he'll go like tossing and tumbling. But he like also has, again, this just athleticism to him. Someone who is like very much like set up to be perhaps someone, but has this athleticism, will always roll it off and get to his feet quickly. You see that she will close the distance, and he will do this quick gesture with his hands, and these blue sparks will come directly at Clarion, and she will scream and kind of slip in the sand as she braces for it. You see that he will lunge forward, and in that fall he will push her and kind of trip her over a kind of established line of this circle. The crowd falls dead silent as worry takes over. You see that she checks herself for a moment and looks at her arms, where she thought she was about to take some kind of magical harm. The energy will come down, like the worry and the fear will come down. And with a sigh, she'll kind of look up at Gavron and say, "It was fake." And you see he'll, standing very proud, will say, "Real magic, real illusion." And will kind of create another little bit of illusion, which is something that people this young can't quite like do so effectively. You see that they're kind of slow laughs, and the joy returns. She's a little bit unhappy, but will accept the defeat. Clever defeat. You see that Gavron, who, again, before this moment, hadn't really shown much of a, at least public, what's the word, like skill or acuity, I think that's the word, for magic like this. But he will begin to move his hands and create this blue illusion above everyone's heads, just almost like its own little starscape. Nothing complicated, but people will kind of like smile and clap. And you see, I think Dertig once again, in the way that he does get caught up, will just take in the amazement of this scene.
I think there's like kind of two things. I think there's like a little bit of a process to this. You know, he's known who Clarion, that was her name. You know, he's known who she was. I think that, you know, whenever he sees her, especially in this position, there might be like an unacknowledged sort of like sting. I think that there's like a part of him that like both like kind of resents the idea that this is what he should be, but also wants to be it. But then I think that like as it kind of nears towards the end, I think he's not kind of like sort of immediately entranced with the things that Gavron can do, like right off the bat. But I think that when he turns and sees like how Dertig like reacts to it, I don't necessarily even think he realizes, I guess, how much like, I guess, a want to kind of evoke that from him. He seems like he watches him kind of become captivated. And I think that like he gets stuck on that more than anything else. It's not specifically about what Gavron can do. It's about the way that Dertig like responds to it. It's about the way that everybody else responds to it.
Gavron, as he is doing this illusion, or you know, once it dies down, it's always been known that Gavron wanted to be an Arcanite. He always wanted to go to the mainland, to the Cloud Tower, and become a great warrior wizard. But he has been accepted into becoming a faith hunter. which is not as bad as it sounds. I think perhaps even through like him talking about the arcane order in the way that like someone's like very proud of like talking about an Ivy League school that they're interested in at the end of high school or something. Is that what people do? I don't know anything about America. But in the way that people, will be like, I'm going out of this, I'm going to get into this program. We talk about the Faith Hunters as like, they are the people who protect the Fulian people from things that go bump in the night. Like after whatever happened in the history, I don't think Cesarine cares much for like the Fulian history classes, but after whatever happened, the Faith Hunters were formed as this like elite of the elite, looking out into the dangers of the world or whatever lies beyond, protecting from it. And it's very, very impressive and difficult thing to become. And I think that just gets out in the world. There's this admiration, there's this attention that gets drawn towards him. I think Dertig will kind of look at you in a way that to see if you're enjoying this in the same way. But I don't imagine he's met with like a mirrored glance in any sense.
I think he's like looking at me to see if I'm enjoying this in the same way, but I'm looking at him.
Yeah. I don't think he knows how to interpret whatever the look is given in all that's going on. I think there's a little bit of that like adrenaline that's still dying down from hearing someone shriek and scream as Clarion did. It felt like she thought she was going to die. The night goes on and eventually come to a gentle halt.
I think he kind of just kind of falls back to the night with that same unease from earlier, like that almost like brief distraction. As he settles in, that feeling just kind of returns.
I think something that Cesarine has never seen. When the two of you fall asleep on the beach, again, I think you've brought your things with you, and kind of using your bags as like pillows. As you are turned away from Dertig, maybe on your side, that kind of sense of amazement or wonder, often directed at you when you're not looking, but nothing is acted upon. The two of you fall asleep, and the light of the dawn, I think, coming over the island or around it, will be hidden from the two of you, but will wake you gently. The two of you will go towards the harbor before most people are awake and at work, as the fishers are getting ready to go out on their boats with their empty cages and nets. As the, I think, satisfying sounds, the clunks of boots on rich and tempered wood, as you approach this ferry that will take you to Bellon first thing. So you may arrive just after dusk. I don't think, unless there's something in your mind, I don't think there's anything particularly special about the morning. I think you awake in that kind of dazed state and have a sort of limited sense of awareness. I think as you board the boat and find a place on the deck to just relax, as the other people in the morning get settled, you see that Clarion does get on here as well. I think Dertig will, as he gets on the boat, like immediately fall asleep just amongst some stuff leading up on the side. And as the little simple magic runes enchanted on the underside of the boat to make passing over the waters easier light up, and the sails fill, as you look back out at Fimmel, a place which you may never see again, and all the people you may be leaving behind. Dertique sleeping not far away from you. You see, maybe once you're like 100 feet out, maybe probably less. I don't know how visible it would be at 100 feet, but maybe 50 feet out or so, departed from the dock, you see silver eyes, black flowers upon antlers. One more time.
I think this time Cesarine perks up just like a tad and will watch until it's no longer visible. He kind of zones out on it, or zones in, I guess you could say. But I don't think there's any like conscious like thought process or like anything like observations or anything like that. I think it's more like a gentle captivation. Yeah, that's weird.
I would like you to roll a d20. And with this, I think we will use the reputation dice that you have with Dertique, which I think with the two of you, although typically reputation is applied in different circumstances, I think it's reasonable between friends. I think you have all 5d4 of reputation.
6, 4, 10, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 total for 6, 4, 4, 3, 1, 3.
21 total. As you look at this figure, this creature, I think you are overwhelmed with emotion. It possesses you. But I don't think you know what it is. No one is watching you right now. Dertique is asleep, and your back is to everyone else who would be on this ship. And I think, just at the feeling this much emotion, I think you feel like you needed to cry. You don't know why.
I think if it gets strong enough that I feel like it's going to happen, I definitely feel like Cesarine is fighting that with what he can. Maybe not even like consciously. I just think he is a person who probably just has a really hard time doing that, like, or allowing that of himself.
As you look at this creature, you feel as though you can see it, as though you're looking into its eyes for longer than the distance would allow. Eventually you can't see it, and I think in those early morning without much to do, I think you take a nap, and when you awake, I don't think it's clear to you if that was something that happened or if you dreamed it up. Those emotions pushed and bottled down. You see, as you awake, kind of midday, sun is high in the sky, beating down and hot. The sounds of the wind rushing by in the waves. I think Dertique is just fucking laid out, just arms a-sprawling, still sleeping. I think you see Clarion is with maybe like 10 feet away, arms over the kind of ledge or the banister of the ship, looking out into the water. I think she is like a head taller than you. I don't think often you've like approached right up to her, but she's a tall person. I think at this point maybe you're a bit hungry.
There's something about the way that you described the hot sun that made me like bodily feel like that weird sweaty feeling when you wake up.
It's so fucking humid in Philia. It's these islands are even drier than a lot of places. That's one thing that I think Philians don't talk about is you get into like the fucking jungles and the mystical red jungles, and it's like this shit's humid. It's hard to breathe. But yeah, it's even now. It's humid.
Yeah. So I'm gonna. Well, first, like, I'll kind of like look out, you know. There's something about like even if like realistically, Cesarine would be like, I'll look out and see water. There's like the aspect of like traveling and you've just woken up where you gotta like look around real quick. So I'll look out, kind of turn and look out towards the water.
There is nothing but blue as far as the eye can see. Maybe perhaps the occasional like bird in the sky and the cloud, but mostly just blue.
What do I have anything like on me? Like, do I have some bitch stuffed on my sandwich from yesterday?
I think you have some like perhaps bread type things, little things to eat, dried, very much like traveling rations.
Some water.
Yeah.
Water's okay. I'll have a little munch and a little water. I feel like I'm probably dehydrated.
Yeah.
You wake up and you've got that weird taste in your mouth.
That like heaviness in your head. Looking over the water, I imagine going over the edge too. Big distance from Clarion. I don't think the two of you talk very much, but I think it's all this weird situation which like her dad or her mom and your dad are like co-workers and friends, but like, has he ever introduced you to them? No. So you see there's this like weird passing familiarity. She will look over as you were like some of the few people kind of her age on the ship, and also like going to the same place. And for the first time in like a long time, I think she'll actually start a conversation. I think she'll start with Cesarine. How are you? And I think a kind of like awkward, like, I don't know how to talk to people kind of way.
Me either. And with the same energy being returned, I'm good. How are you?
Good. You excited to go home? Will you be joining the Legion?
And he does give like an beforehand. That's absolutely in character. I think that there's a lot of hesitation because yesterday he kind of thought, what he would be doing. Like he's got like somewhat of a plan, maybe. Now he's just by a single question is like, I gotta like rethink this all over again. So there's like a definite hesitation. And he says, I'm still considering my options. Don't want to make any rash decisions. He does not seem sure about that. That is not said with confidence.
I think there's a sense of confidence in Clarion about the Legion, in the sense that is direction. But I think she possesses the kind of sense of like, I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life. And I think she says it would be easier if we, with the trial and everything, if we did it together. As much as I and we'll kind of just like open her arms and be like, I'm like this. I'm scared of facing the night still.
I think Cesarine is like kind of dumbfounded right now. He like gives her like it's like a look that he like very quickly tries to like gain control of like, are you sure about that? And I think it's like so like, I don't think he like realizes he's doing it because I don't think he like it's not so much as a conscious doubt, but it's definitely there. And for a minute he'll just kind of like stare at her. I haven't made a decision, but I'll let you know either way. And I think in his head, like in this moment, there's like two things happening. A, is this a prank? B, this option becomes a tad more viable for him now. This thought process is kind of validated now. It's shifting something inside of him very quickly.
You see, she says, I mean, my mom's always said that I would be fine. I think that, there's a lot of Legion in Bellon. And I was talking with my mom, writing to her, and I think I might go to Little Bay on the mainland once I, pass the trial. So if I don't know if you're looking for a way out of Bellon, but going there with someone. It's that's my plan anyway. But because I know your father is he always talks about you joining the Legion. But talks, I'm sure. I thought it might be easier,
Yeah, I am.
Were you thinking of doing something else? Are you?
I guess I just, I think a little bit like a fumbling idiot, he goes, well, it's going to be a busy summer. That's like...
I think when you were like out crabbing in summers, she was like going through intense like sword training, or like just like physical trials put upon her by her very intense mother. I think she just kind of looks at you like doesn't know how to compute what you said exactly. It's just like that's not a recognized input. Yeah, I wasn't prepared for that dialogue option. And I think she'll just kind of like nod in a way like, I guess I accept that. I guess that's what I have to do.
And he's gonna kind of cut her off. And I can feel like a sudden like I've got to fix that. And without thinking about it too much, she goes, "Well, I'm gonna join the Legion. Like, obviously, it's just a decision about now or later, or my younger sibling there's stuff to do around."
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I'm not putting anything on you. I think I'll be fine.
No, yeah. I didn't think so that.
But we can, if you want to talk about it, we have a few weeks or so before it's problem.
We'll talk.
Yeah. Well, anyways, and she'll kind of look at this ship that is not a lot of space to really get away from someone, and will kind of just in the way that's like, I don't really know how to walk away from someone. Our end of this conversation, or like not be around you and not talk, and we'll kind of just like go to like one of the lower decks and just sit in a weird space.
So Cesarine is going to kind of just like slide against the ledge until he's like kind of sitting and leaning, just like fold into himself, having like a fucking idiot moment.
I think the day passes. Dirty eventually wakes up, and it's again the same kind of passive conversations, not really wanting to talk about what's really on your minds. I think the energy is like distant, not intentionally, but just like between the two of you, can't quite get back to what was in Fimmel. It's a long day. Again, today's the first day of summer, the day of a new year as well. And the sun beats down hot. And as it sets beneath the horizon, the final kind of colors for the night pulling back like a curtain for that vast skyscape, the three of you will get off the ship with a couple of others. I don't think there are any other kids like your age around, but I think there are a couple of people who travel back and forth. Clarion will kind of give you a wave as she goes off to her part of town. Notably, Bellon is much quieter smaller, and the buildings are less interesting. It doesn't possess that kind of richness that Fimmel does. Immediately in the, like, just off the docks, there is a bit of like a market square, town square, where the Temple of the Safeguard is, almost as far away from like the heart of the Legion, who lives further into the town, just a little bit, as if it's being pushed away onto the docks. Tertig, as he steps off with you, we'll see that kind of wave from Clarion and say, did you talk on the boat?
Briefly.
Oh. What was that like? Your parents know each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We kind of know each other, not really. No, she asked me what I was going to do now. She asked me if I was going to join the Legion or try, and I'm going to watch his face.
There is a look of fear. Not like super like, but there's just a little bit of fear that creeps into the eyes as the prospect is brought up. And he will kind of look over to the Temple of the Safeguard, instinctually. But he won't say anything. He's just like listening.
You know, I told her it was going to be a busy summer.
Yeah. A big, lots of work for the fish crabs.
Yeah. She told me that if I was going to do it, that she offered to team up.
You should. He kind of blurts that out in a way that maybe he even didn't mean to. And there's a look on his face as he's like processing what he said and trying to make sense of it, and almost like a just beginning to well up in the slightest bit. And we'll look at you for a second and say, it would make things easier if you were going to join the Legion.
Yeah. I haven't made that decision. Yeah, I figured, I was going to, and there is like definitely like the stuttering and like the long pauses. And then I'll kind of say, like I just didn't consider it a real option before. I wasn't going to.
He swallows, isn't quite sure where words and sentences end. And in sort of, again, a long, drawn-out silence, I think quite a few of those seen. And you see he says, I'm going to join the Safeguard. And there's not really a place for me here. I'm going to have to sleep at the temple. Fall there all tonight. That's where I belong.
Okay, well, I'll see you later. And he kind of just like starts to like walk away. And like there's like a very abrupt, like, I'm ending the conversation, I'm leaving. Doesn't I think that there's even like a lack of like, am I happy? Am I mad about what you just told me? He's just like, I'm exiting. I'll see you around. Bye. But it's like very clear he's uncomfortable. He is ending the conversation. It's not a casual, but it's there's an avoidance happening here.
Oh, he's terrified. He's terrified of whatever's going on. Just watches it happen as you walk into the town. As you get out of sight, he will, I think, with more explicit tears in his eyes, approach the temple and will sleep there, as there is no other place for him here. I imagine as you leave that behind on this night, walking through the streets, I don't imagine you go home immediately. I think after like a minute or two of just walking away from Dartigue, I think the memories of what home feels like settle into you and becomes harder to take steps toward it. But I also think you know that if Clarion is home, she goes and tells her mother that Cesarine was on the ship today, and your father hears about that. You came home and did not come to him. You didn't come home to see him and your brother. There are going to be consequences.
Take the long route. I think he's kind of like as he's walking, he's kind of game planning for like entering his own house. There's like a large consideration of how he can minimize, almost like preparing for any like questions, or there's like a brief consideration of like, just make yourself as small as possible. Be like, say very little, get to your room as fast as physically possible, but ultimately knows that it's never easy, and that could also result in more grief. But he's running through conversations in his head that could potentially lead to, again, like just a minimization of anything that he could say that would just make having to go home and have even a simple interaction as easy as possible.
As you walk through the streets, small, I think, like packed down dirt streets of Bellon, it's quiet. The people are getting into their own homes. I don't think there's a super hard curfew, but a heavily implied one. I think you see members of the Legion patrolling 2 by 2 in their white and gold armor, helmets that mostly cover the face, but a familiar sense to them. Some of them look at you and give you a nod, and familiarity is a sense of being seen. Although your father has been retired for quite some time, I think there's still a fear of those like white knights in the street as to what they represent. And eventually you find yourself standing outside of your small, simple home, the edge of town, in the wilds, or just outside the wilds of Boulogne, where the White Knight used to steal you to in your dreams. I think standing outside of this home, perhaps with fear in your eyes, you want to go, but you know you have to stay. Under the light of the moon's red silver, yellow, and blue. This has been Cesarine's Saga, with Tucker Patterson as Cesarine and Jesse T. William as the guide. This story uses the Legacy and Saga TTRPG designed by Jesse T. William. It is edited and scored also by Jesse T. William.